Hello and welcome to Ageless Rock Channel, where megalithic sites are seen from a different perspective. Today, we are going to check out the forever mysterious Wall of Six Monoliths at Ollantaytambo town in Cuzco region in Peru. According to history, Ollantaytambo is a very important place going as far as 500 years ago when the Spanish arrived. The conquistadors had been shown Intihuatanas, but they destroyed every one of them when they get the chance to see it. They were shown giant bones, but they destroyed and burned everything they see. But in this small little town called Ollantaytambo in Urubamba province, there is something too big to be destroyed. The conquistadors didn't destroy it because there isn't any link to religion. In fact, it is not linked to anything. It is big and useless, and so the Spaniards left it unharmed. I guess this is the key to survival in times of conflict. These monstrous stones have been around since forever, and no one knows anything proves that it is something not made by humans. Otherwise, it would have been replicated to build palaces, houses, schools, hospitals, military forts, or anything that Peruvians can use on a daily basis. Today, Ollantaytambo is a small town with only approximately 12,000 population. I am not sure if I should assume in the past the population is 10 times more or 10 times less. But I can assume no Incas created the six monoliths because if they do, the Spaniards would have learned from them. The most famous monument here is probably this wall of six monoliths. This wall of andesite blocks stacked upright is approximately 11 meters long and 4.3 meters high. These stones were made like they were soft like clay. Then, the 5 gaps were filled in to create a superstructure with no gap. I'm going to make a guess on the weight of this thing. I will just assume the thickness is 1.5 meters thick based on the photos I can find. Looks like the average weight of one monolith is about 33 tons. Do you think the Incas successfully shaped and moved 200 tons of granite but decided to keep quiet when the Spaniards arrived? You can find that some sources say it is 50 tons each, but I think it might be referring to the largest block. Whether it is 30 tons or 50 tons, putting 200 tons worth of andesite cannot be forgotten in history, but yet it did. So now we have to guess what is this thing. So let's look at this photo for a start. This is how members of NATO observed a nuclear bomb explosion in 1957. They were sitting on wooden benches, facing one direction, wearing dark glasses, and basically witnessing a huge ball of fire. We have about 2,000 atomic tests since the first atomic bomb test known as Trinity test in July 16, 1945. For observation purposes, we have a tower, a 10 feet long trench, and a building for shelter. All these are in a desert with no civilization as far as your eyes can see. So now, just imagine we get extremely primitive people living among us today and bring them to a nuclear test site. We will walk through with them the area and things involved with the bomb test. Then, we ask them what they think about these structures. Perhaps they will tell you that the tower is a sundial and the top is a temple to worship the sun. So this is called the Sun Temple. The temple is very high because they believe they are nearer to the gods. This is an important sundial because it is important to put the first seed for agricultural activities to survive in a desert. What about the deep, dug out rectangular hole in the ground in the middle of nowhere. Maybe they will tell you the trench is a tomb for the king. It is empty now because everything was stolen. Maybe it is a water tank for rituals related to sacrifice. What do you think the primitive people will say about this super advanced structure with the roof and round windows? By now, they will be convinced beyond reasonable doubt that this structure is definitely a palace for the king whose tomb was raided. So this must be the king's palace. The benches were most likely for agricultural purposes to plant grapes or tomatoes. These advanced desert dwellers worshipped the sun, had a sundial for agriculture, had a king, but when the time comes, they decided to abandon this place and left nothing written. So now, the very primitive civilization went back to their people and relate a story of a very advanced civilization in a desert, but they went missing. There was a king, and therefore there was a kingdom. The king lived in the palace. His tomb was empty because the body was stolen. They worship the sun and have a huge sundial for agriculture. They like to eat tomatoes. Does it sound familiar? Are we not back to square one? For those megalithic fans looking at megalithic sites, we know we are looking at a civilization capable of shaping bedrock in a way we will never understand. Maybe this was a shelter against something, and the darkened top left corner intrigues me. I wonder if it was the result of something extremely hot and therefore this wall was actually a shelter for unknown ancient builders. The 6 monoliths are famous blocks, but they are not the only big blocks. There are many more behind them and no one is talking about it. There are many megaton megablocks just as impressive as the 6 pieces in front. Later civilization placed smaller blocks around the megaliths. The monoliths are not limited to only 6 in front and several at the back. In fact, they are everywhere. This block in the photo is most likely more than 50 tons. For a civilization with no wheels, moving this megaton block from anywhere to anywhere is a mindless activity. In fact, this place is so littered with 30-ton blocks, it feels like either a cataclysmic event happened or the ancient builders were still building it and have yet to decide where these pieces were supposed to be. Archaeologists say this is an unfinished sun temple, since the entire area is a sun temple and it is a mess. This site has so many extremely big megaliths strewn all over. It is clear to me the ancient Incas were not responsible for this mess. Even if the population of Ollantaytambo is many times more inhabitants than today, they could not have been responsible for this mess. If they were so good at shaping bedrock, they could have made smaller blocks and finished this temple before the Spaniards arrived. Wall of 6 monoliths are 6 stones leaning side by side with blocks in between that seems to have been added like fillers. The pattern that seems to show up out of nowhere looks like something done with a trowel. It is unmistakably the shape of a chacana, which is a sacred shape of Inca religion and tradition. Here is an interesting stone. Look at this part of the stone. You have a very smooth and wide surface that goes into the rock the thickness of a razor. It certainly reminds me of egg slicer method, where the object was dealt with when it was soft. Imagine an egg slicer with one metal string that goes through the egg. One of the most compelling evidence of unknown ancient builder is the T-shaped clamp you can find at megalithic sites around the world. If this is an Incan technology, they would have these metal clamps for their wooden houses all over Ollantaytambo today. I cannot solve any mystery at Ollantaytambo except this one. Who brought this gigantic block of pink granite to this site? This extremely large, nicely cut stone was brought here by this giant race called Caucasoidosaurus. This biped dinosaur humanoid hybrid came from the Caucasus region of Europe. According to researchers, the most likely source of the megalith is about 4 kilometers away. It is going to be a tremendous task for a civilization with no wheels. Since they have no writing, this mega project would have been talk of the town for many centuries. But strangely, no one was talking about it and knowledge was not handed down. At the end of the day, this site is as confusing as the first day the Spanish arrived. The Incas certainly did not smack bedrock to have terraces to plant corn next to the unfinished sun temple with gigantic pink granite blocks strewn all over except for the 6 blocks that was raised upright. Well, that's all for now as far as this perplexing wall is concerned. Hope you have a wonderful day and see you in the next video on Ollantaytambo. This is Berniong signing out. Tupananchis Kama.